I thought I had everything in my life under control. A dream job, a luxurious apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, and enough savings to live peacefully for the rest of my days. My sister Clara, on the other hand, has always been the troublemaker of the family. But nothing could have prepared me for the shock when Clara sold our family's ancestral home to travel aimlessly across America like a drifter. And worse, just last week, my parents called calmly asking me to let Clara's entire family, 4 chaotic, unpredictable people, move into my apartment. Indefinitely. That's when I realized family isn't always the safe place you can return to. Sometimes they're the very people who destroy the life you've spent your whole existence building. Before we dive into today's dramatic and unexpected story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. And leave a comment to let us know where you're watching from. Now let's move on together to a bitter, calculating tale filled with shocking twists that will send chills down everyone's spine. My name is Elise, and I work as a financial advisor in Chicago. My life is a tapestry made up of thoughtful threads, and every decision I make secures my future. My condo, which is situated above the tumultuous waves of Lake Michigan, is my haven, with its neat lines and well-organized spaces reflecting the stability I've built brick by brick. However, my sister Clara dances to a different rhythm, and her life is a whirlwind of impulse that has always left me to pick up the pieces. However, nothing could have prepared me for the storm she unleashed when she sold her family's home to pursue a short-lived dream across America's open roads, nor for the call from our parents, their voices heavy with expectation, demanding that I open my home to her family of 4 indefinitely. The weight of their plea presses against my heart, a collision of duty and defiance, as I stand at the edge of a decision that could destroy everything I've built. From early childhood, responsibility was my shadow a constant companion before I could even name it. At 10, I kept track of my allowance in a spiral notebook, its pages blooming with neon hearts while other kids were lost in the flicker of Saturday morning cartoons, and my tiny hands traced dreams of security. By 13, I was the neighborhood's go-to babysitter, saving money for a future I could already envision. High school meant working late shifts at a bookstore shelving novels while my peers chased ephemeral thrills, and college saw me juggling the demands of a scholarship while working as a waitress. After graduation, while friends were traveling to Paris or Prague, I put all of my energy into an emergency fund, then a down payment for my condo, a 2-bedroom retreat where Lake Michigan whispered against the shore. Our mother, Diane, would write another check to cover Clara's rent after yet another abandoned passion pottery, 1 month photography the next, and yoga instruction before that. Our father, Robert, would sigh, "She's got your mother's wild heart." His words a quiet verdict that my pragmatism was somehow less alive, less worthy. Their love for Clara was a river flowing freely, while mine felt like a stream carefully channeled but rarely celebrated. Clara, 2 years my junior, was my opposite, a wildfire to my steady hearth. Her childhood bedroom was a kaleidoscope of abandoned clothes and half-finished projects. Her homework was conjured in frantic bursts before the bell, and she burned through her college fund by 19. Relief swept over our family like a summer rain when Clara met Daniel at the age of 23. He was an electrician, steady as the circuits he wired, and his income promised to ground her restless spirit. Their wedding was small, a garden party filled with fairy lights, but I covertly paid for the flowers and catering when Clara's vision outstripped their savings. I told myself that it was a gift for her future, a hope that she would finally root herself. Their daughter Lila and Ethan arrived a year later, bright sparks in our family's orbit, their laughter a balm at gatherings, and I adored them setting up education funds, despite Clara's dismissive remarks about living for today. When Clara and Daniel purchased a modest home in Evanston 3 years ago, I was filled with hope. The house was simple, with a backyard for Lila's cartwheels and Ethan's dinosaur battles, and it was close to good schools, so it was a quiet victory. Lila's room is turquoise, Clara told me over the phone, her voice full of pride, and Ethan's got shelves for his T-Rex army. For the first time, she seemed to embrace the weight of responsibility her dreams tied to her children's needs, and I dared to think she had found her anchor. My life continued on its steady course, with my career guiding clients towards secure futures. My condo, a haven of calm, and its 2nd bedroom, a home office where I mapped out budgets under the lake's watchful gaze. I dated sparingly, unwilling to upend my carefully constructed world for a fleeting spark content in my solitude. But underneath it all, there were old currents stirring. Clara's crises were a constant tide that dragged me along with her. When she needed childcare, I had to reschedule client meetings while juggling deadlines to drive Lila to ballet or Ethan to soccer. When their washing machine broke, I wired money knowing that repayment was a long way off. When Daniel's truck needed repairs, I spent hours researching mechanics before driving him to the shop. Every crisis had the same rhythm. Clara's rash decision, a cry for assistance, our parents' gentle prodding, and my reluctant step forward to keep the peace. Resentment simmered, a quiet ember I buried beneath duty. Therapy, which began 6 months ago with Dr. Elise, was my first rebellion. "You're not their safety net," she said, her voice a lifeline. "Their crises don't own you." I nodded, but boundaries felt like a foreign tongue, sharp and unfamiliar, as I struggled with the guilt of saying no. Clara's restlessness persisted, and her Instagram, which had previously been a collection of family photos and house renovations, started to change. It now featured pictures of vans converted into mobile homes, families preparing meals under the stars, and couples cuddling next to views of canyons. "Don't you ever feel imprisoned, Elise?" she asked at a family barbecue while scrolling through another van life account with her eyes fixed on her phone. "I like my life," I said steadily. "Stability suits me." She smiled with a glimmer of sympathy in her eyes. "That's so safe, Elise. There's a world out there." Her words hurt, framing my choices as small as if foresight were a flaw. I managed to steer the conversation to Lila's art camp, avoiding the uneasiness her question had caused. In retrospect, those words were a warning, a sign of the storm building inside her heart. I should have foreseen Clara's announcement at Sunday dinner, as it unleashed a storm that tore through our family like a thunderhead splintering the sky. The table was set with our mother's best china lasagna, steaming under the candlelight, a scene too planned to be innocent. Clara's voice, bright with a fevered edge, declared they'd sold their Evanston home, the anchor I'd thought would hold her. "We're breaking free," she said, her hand gripping Daniel's. "No more mortgage chains, no more suburban cage, just the open road, a van, and the kids learning from the earth itself." My fork clattered against the plate, the sound a small rebellion against the chaos she'd unleashed. Lila and Ethan, silent at the edge of the table, pushed their food in quiet unease, their eyes betraying the cost of her dream. My heart, a drum of dread, knew such an act was no mere whim. It was a wildfire that would burn us all. With our father's hesitant remark, the entire room caught its breath. "A larger house, perhaps?" Clara's laugh was a harsh gust. "No, Dad, we're done with that trap. We're road schooling the kids, letting the Grand Canyon teach them what desks never could." He questioned, holding onto a dream that was rapidly dwindling. I looked at her and said quietly, "And their friends, their instructors, their routine. They'll adapt, Elise. Kids are resilient, not programmed like us." She waved away my words. "What an adventure for them." Our mother Diane said, her enthusiasm a betrayal that stung. Our father nodded, his memory conjured by her nudge. "We dreamed of such an adventure once before, you girls, though I didn't remember any such tale." Their swift support swept me away, causing me to doubt my own understanding. After dinner, I huddled Daniel in the kitchen, with his shoulders down over a glass of wine, while Clara showed our parents her vision board, which included vans with bamboo interiors and solar panels glinting beneath desert suns. I said, "Are you really on board with her on this? It's Clara's fire, Elise. She says we're trapped, that the kids are being molded for a life of desks and debt." I said, my voice a whisper, to keep us out of her circle. He sighed, his eyes tired. "And you? What are you looking for?" "I want them safe," he said as I pressed, looking for the guy who had previously seemed to be her anchor. "But she's certain that this is freedom, that we'll find jobs, that it'll all work out." His hands created air quotes, fury carved in every word. "Have you budgeted for this? Have you budgeted for medical treatment, accidents, or education?" His lack of response was sufficient, creating a gap where preparation ought to have been. Their house was sold for $50,000 more than it was worth. Due to the market's craze, a windfall that with careful attention could have secured their future. However, Clara, being true to herself, put it all into a Mercedes Sprinter van, which had a price tag of $65,000 before the $35,000. In customization skylights, a composting toilet, and handcrafted cabinets, all of which gleamed in her Instagram posts with the caption, "Van Life Liberation." Her feed was a carefully manicured vision of wild horses and canyon sunsets, but Lila's eyes were quiet, and Ethan held his 3 surviving dinosaurs, while the rest were sacrificed for the van's limited space. I watched heart-pounding as she traded their stability for a fantasy, her posts filling in the already existing gaps. "Have you planned for emergencies?" I asked her as we met for coffee in an Evanston cafe in the chilly October air. Despite the pain, I spoke steadily and said, "What if the van breaks down in a desert? What will happen to Ethan's reading and Lila's math? You're such a shadow. Elise always seeing storms. We'll figure it out. That's the beauty of this," she say, rolling her eyes and leaving her coffee unfinished. Her words were a chant lifted from influencers whose lives she admired. "The kids need structure." I retorted, "Not just new views." She leaned forward, her eyes keen. "You sound like the system trying to cage them. Our ancestors roamed freely, Elise, and they thrived." I bit back a retort about lifespans and literacy, instead asking, "And Daniel's job?" "He'll find work. Electricians are needed everywhere," she said with a dismissive shrug, but her voice trailed off a glimmer of uncertainty that she swiftly smothered. Our parents threw them a farewell party with a van-shaped mockery of their choice for the cake. Friends toasted their courage and authenticity, while I stood in the corner with a wine glass in hand and a knotted heart wondering, "Aren't you proud of Clara?" Daniel's resignation from his stable job was the final straw. 6 years of seniority and benefits abandoned for Clara's vision. Her words were a blade cutting through my carefully constructed defenses and portraying my life as a lesser thing, a cage of my own making. Diane asked, her voice bright with forced cheer. "She's seizing life." I met her eyes, speaking softly. "It feels more like running from it." Her smile hardened. "Not everyone wants your safe little world, Elise. Some need more than budgets to feel alive." I scrolled through Clara's first posts, which were a mirage of joy: sunrise yoga by mountain lakes, Ethan pointing at deer in Yellowstone, fairy lights twinkling over campsite dinners in my condo as they drove away, Lila's face pressed against the van's window, her small hand waving my chest, constricted with an unnamed grief. In therapy, I confessed to Dr. Ellis. "They look happy. Maybe I'm wrong." She said, tilted her head, and asked in a soft voice, "What do the kids say?" I paused and said, "Clara hasn't let me talk to them because she says they're too busy being present." Dr. Ellis's silence reflected my anxiety that the children were suffering and that this dream was already eroding. Soon enough, the cracks showed up. Clara's posts became fewer in number, and her defensive captions read, "Van life isn't all glamour, but it's real." Underneath, a picture of the van's small interior, with dishes piled in a tiny sink and clothes spilling from cubbies. Follower comments changed to, "What about school?" "They are adjusting," our father said in a strained voice. "New paths come with costs." I wanted to yell that this path had consumed their home, their savings, and their children's stability, but instead I asked, "Are Lila and Ethan learning anything?" Her response was a vague ode to world schooling that avoided specifics. A mechanical issue in Colorado exposed the van's fragility, resulting in a $3,500 repair bill. My heart sank for the children I loved like my own, as he paused heavily before saying, "Clara says they're seeing geography firsthand," but his tone lacked conviction. Clara's dream carried them westward, but the road wasn't the freedom she'd painted, with its curves concealing thorns that tore at their fragile bonds. My nights became burdened with anxiety, and the waves of Lake Michigan sounded like a restless chant against the windows of my condo as Clara's carefully curated posts faltered, revealing glimpses of a truth she couldn't filter. Her calls came like sudden storms, each one a plea for rescue from the chaos she'd sown. But my heart, torn between love and the boundaries Dr. Ellis advised me to maintain, wrestled with the cost of saving them. The children, Lila and Ethan, were my guiding stars, their small faces haunting my dreams, their laughter dimmed by a journey they hadn't chosen. As Clara's vision crumbled, Elise stood at a crossroads, my resolve a fragile bridge between duty and the fierce need to protect my own peace. A post from Utah that featured the van parked in a dusty lot with the caption, "Embracing the raw, unfiltered life," revealed a cluttered interior with Lila's eyes far away and Ethan's dinosaurs clutched like talismans. As the chill of October grew, Clara's Instagram, which had once been a tapestry of sunny vistas, became sparse, its gloss replaced by gritty reality. Followers' comments became razor-sharp. Where are the kids' books? Their educational institution, our parents' calls became more frequent. Their voices strained, and Diane insisted, "They're just finding their rhythm." But her tone was a thin veil of doubt. Lila misses her friends, Robert admitted. Ethan keeps asking for his old room. And Clara's responses were brittle. They're learning from the world, not cages. But her words rang hollow, a chant losing its power. My chest tightened, picturing their tiny hands reaching for stability in a world of constant motion. "Elise, we're sinking," Clara said in a whisper, the van humming faintly behind her. "Another repair campgrounds cost more than we thought, and gas is bleeding us dry." I sat up the silence of my condo, a stark contrast to her panic. Clara's first desperate call came at midnight, her voice a trembling thread. "I can help with a plan, Clara, but not just money. We need to talk budgets and sustainability." I asked, my voice steady but my heart pounding. "A couple thousand just until Daniel finds steady work," she said in a pleading tone. I took a breath, and Dr. Ellis's words echoed. Silence stretched, then her voice hardened. "You've got plenty, Elise, why make this hard?" I persisted, saying, "Throwing money won't fix this. It's a cycle." She yelled, "We need help, not your lectures," and hung up, leaving me to stare at the black lake with shame and rage raging inside of me. The following day, her Instagram blazed with a defiant sunset with the caption, "Some will never grasp freedom over cages, their loss." The barb was mine, but our parents' call disclosed that they had sent $2,000 from their retirement savings, a reckless gift they couldn't afford. "There are grandkids," Robert said defensively, "stranded in Utah." I bit back my frustration. That money won't last. It's a bandage on a broken leg. Diane's voice sharpened. "You could help Elise. Your condo has space." The suggestion was a stone in my chest. Their expectation that I would open my home was a familiar pressure. "They chose this," I said. "I can't undo their choices." Their silence was judgmental as always, but I held firm, my boundaries, a shield forged in therapy's fire. Daniel's intermittent work, wiring a barn in Wyoming, a few days on a site in Colorado, kept them afloat, but barely. Clara's posts became desperate. "Minimalism is our truth now." She wrote next to a picture of the children eating rice from paper bowls, their faces pale, Lila's hair unwashed, and Ethan's eyes dull. A video call with our parents gave us a glimpse of their disintegration, with Clara and Daniel's voices sharp in the background, arguing over roots, money, and whose dream this was. Lila briefly appeared, holding a tattered workbook, whispering, "I miss my teacher. We don't do school anymore." Her words were a knife piercing my resolve. Before I could reply, Clara drew her away, her glare a warning through the screen. Winter dashed the van's promise of chasing warmth, and the unbudgeted expenses piled up like snow. The cost of propane for heating drained their finances, while Clara's posts tried to portray the situation positively by claiming that shivering under stars is real living. But the romantic notion had disappeared, replaced by a harsh reality. Our parents' calls became frantic, and Diane spoke in a broken voice, saying, "They're cold, Elise," while I stood in my condo, which was orderly and starkly contrasted with their chaos. "I can help with solutions," I said. "Jobs, budgets, housing, but my home isn't a shelter." Robert's voice was stern. "Family doesn't let family freeze." The guilt was a tide urging me to give up, but I saw Lila's face and Ethan's dinosaurs, and I knew that allowing Clara's dream would only make their wounds worse. My laptop served as a lifeline as I spent nights researching affordable rentals in small towns. electrician job boards, and budgeting templates, all of which were threads to weave a path out of their spiral. I texted Clara offering to review their finances and find a way forward, and she responded curtly, "We're fine, just a rough patch." But her voice betrayed her on a late-night call, saying, "The kids are struggling," in a raw tone. Lila's anxious, Ethan's scared at night. My heart ached, but I persisted, saying, "Let's make a plan. Clara, sell the van, find a home." And she laughed bitterly. "Give up, that's your response." She hung up her silence a wall, but I could feel the first cracks appearing, her fantasy shattering beneath the weight of reality. "It's not giving up, it's choosing them," I said. I shared my worries with Dr. Ellis, who listened. "Am I leaving them?" I questioned, my voice shaking. "You're offering real help," she said, her eyes steady. "Not the rescue they demand, but the path they need." Her words were a beacon guiding me through the fog of guilt. I started formulating a plan: sell the van for parts, find a cheap apartment, enroll the kids in school, and leverage Daniel's skills to find work in countless towns. The numbers aligned to create a fragile hope, but Clara's defiance loomed. Her belief in the universe providing was a mantra I feared would ultimately drown them all. With November's frost settling over Chicago, I stood at my window, the lake reflecting my unwavering resolve. The children's faces burning in my mind urged me to find a way to save them without losing myself. The horizon darkened as Clara's dream fell apart, a fragile vision crumbling under the weight of winter, its wreckage leaving her family stranded in a Nevada desert. The van, their chariot of freedom, lay broken, its transmission a ruin, costing $12,000, a sum that mocked their dwindling hopes. My phone became a lifeline, and each call from our parents was a gust of panic, their voices begging me to open my condo to Clara, Daniel, Lila, and Ethan to protect them from the storm they'd chased. However, my heart, tempered by Dr. Ellis's wisdom, stood like a lone tree against the gale, refusing to bend under the guilt that tried to uproot me. Lila's worried whispers and Ethan's fading spark fueled my resolve not to rescue, but to rebuild, to create a path where their light could shine again. Clara called at dawn, her voice a raw wound. "We're done, Elise." She sobbed, the motel's hum a faint echo behind her. "The van's dead, we're stuck in this nowhere town, no money, no way out." The quiet of my condo was a stark contrast to the steady drumbeat of Lake Michigan's waves as I listened. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice calm, but my chest tight with their pain. She revealed everything. They had only $200 left for motel nights. Daniel's day job was barely covering food. Their credit card was maxed. Lila was experiencing nightmares, and Ethan was bedwetting. "I broke them," she whispered, "our home, their school, Daniel's job, all for this." Her admission was a crack in her armor, a truth I'd waited years to hear, but it brought no victory, only a deep ache for the sister I still loved. I offered a lifeline, not money, but clarity. Sell the van. Clara, find an apartment, get the kids back in school. Her silence was heavy, then defiant. "We can't just quit. The universe will provide." Her mantra was a desperate chant clinging to a dream that was now ash. "This isn't fate, it's choices. Let's make better ones for Lila and Ethan." She hung up her anger a wall, but I could feel the cracks widening, her resolve fraying like a rope stretched too thin. Our parents called next, Diane's voice quivering. "They're in a motel, Elise, $50 a night. It's eating them alive." Robert added, "Your spare room could hold them just for a bit." Their plea was like a tide tugging at my roots, but I remained firm, saying, "I'll help with a plan, not my home. They need stability, not a temporary fix." Their silence was a storm cloud heavy with judgment, but I held my ground, my condo's order a shield against their demands. "You're not their savior," she said, "but you can be their guide." I nodded, my eyes burning, "but not like this, not by giving up everything I've built." She smiled. "That's strength, Elise, not selfishness." Her words motivated my next steps. I spent hours researching, using my laptop as a canvas of hope, and found apartments in Nevada towns that cost between $900 and $1,000, $200 a month, close to schools and construction sites where Daniel's skills could find a home. Despite the loss, I sold the van to pay for a deposit and the first month's rent. I created a budget that was lean but livable, charting a route to stability. I texted Daniel, circumventing Clara's defiance, "Can we talk?" "I have ideas," he said at 8 p.m. in the motel lobby. When I connected, his voice was tired but determined, saying, "We're drowning, Elise." I knew this was a mistake, but she was so sure. His candor was a spark, an opportunity to create something new. Clara spent $400 on a yoga retreat in Arizona. Daniel said bitterly, while I begged to fix the van's noises. She wanted photos for her followers. Daniel revealed the truth Clara had concealed. The van's repairs had depleted our parents' credit card, leaving them vulnerable in retirement. "How are they?" I asked, my anger rising. As I leaned closer to the screen, I asked, fearing the response. "Lila cries at night, thinks we're asleep. Ethan's regressing and is scared of the dark." His voice broke, and mine did too. "Let's get them out," I said, sharing my plan: apartments, jobs, school enrollment. "This could work," he said, hope flickering. But Clara won't agree. She sees it as failure. "How is their marriage doing?" His admittance was a painful wound, but it paved the way for progress. "It's cracking, Elise. I pushed for this life to keep her, but it's breaking us," he said, pausing. His eyes widened as I said, "I'll cover the deposit and first month's rent for an apartment for Lila and Ethan, offering a gift rather than a loan." "You'd do that." I nodded and said, "But you need to stand firm, Daniel. No more chasing her dreams at their expense." And he agreed with a new steel in his voice, saying, "I'm done being passive. The kids come first." Over the course of 2 days, we worked covertly with Daniel, searching through my rental list and selecting a 2-bedroom apartment close to a good school. The property manager, moved by their story, accelerated the application process, and I wired $2,500 for the deposit and rent, plus $500 for necessities like beds, a table, and groceries. Daniel confronted Clara, his voice steady, saying, "We're moving into an apartment, the kids need school, and I'm taking a permanent job. You can join us or go alone, but they stay with me." Her rage was a tempest, but when she realized she would lose her kids, she gave in her agreement, a brittle temporary surrender. "You turned your back on Clara?" she asked. Our parents' reaction was a storm of its own. Diane yelled in a harsh voice, "I helped in a way that works, not the way you wanted," Robert said in a gentler tone, as I stood in my condo, the width of the lake reflecting my determination. "It's generous, Elise, but why not take them in?" "My home isn't a solution, it's a bandage," I sighed. "They need roots, not refuge." Diane's silence was icy. "You've always been so hard on her." She said, her words a familiar blade. "I'm hard on chaos," I replied, "because it's hurting the kids I love." The call ended with their disappointment as a weight, but I felt a new strength, a clarity born of standing firm. Lila and Ethan's faces guided me through the gale. As I gazed out at the lake, its waves a song of endurance, I realized the toughest storm was still to come. But I was prepared to face it, my heart a fire that would not die. The storm had passed, leaving scars, but also clear skies, giving Clara's family the opportunity to establish new roots in the Nevada soil. The apartment, modest but steady, became their haven, and the walls served as a canvas for Lila and Ethan's rediscovered light. My heart, which had been torn between duty and defiance, found a quiet rhythm, its beat aligning with the boundaries I'd fought to hold. However, the healing process for our family was a slow dance, with each step a delicate balance of truth and grace. Elise, on the condo's view of Lake Michigan, served as a reminder that stability is a gift, not a cage. As the warmth of spring crept into Chicago, I wove a new thread into our family's tapestry, one of resilience rather than sacrifice, where love meant standing firm to nurture growth rather than chaos. The move to the apartment was a turning point. Lila and Ethan enrolled in a local school, their backpacks full of books, their faces full of tentative hope. Daniel's new job, a permanent position at a construction company, brought a steady paycheck. His hands wired futures instead of chasing dreams. Clara, albeit reluctantly, started to settle her Instagram, silent, her energy redirected to part-time work at a nearby cafe. I visited them in March, Their small home with its furniture from a thrift store and the artwork created by the children was a testament to their fragile rebirth. Lila ran to me, her arms tight. "And Elise, I have a desk now," she said, her voice a melody of pride. Ethan showed me his dinosaur corner, 5 figures reclaimed from a pawnshop. His smile was a spark reignited. My chest swelled not with triumph, but with the quiet joy of seeing them blossom. Our parents Diane and Robert continued to be a storm's echo, their calls tinged with lingering frost. "You could have done more," Diane said, her voice sharp with old habits taken them in. I stood in my condo, the waves of the lake pulsing steadily, and I replied firm but soft. "They have a home now, a school, a life." Robert's tone softened. "You did a lot, Elise, more than we saw." His admission was a crack in their armor, a step toward understanding. Diane's silence persisted, but her text started to change, small notes about Lila's spelling bee and Ethan's soccer tryouts, signs of a thaw I hadn't dared hope for. One Sunday, I drove to their Chicago home without warning, my heart a drum of resolve. "We need to talk," I said, sitting across from them, the air thick with years of unsaid truths. Diane's eyes glistened as she said, "We leaned on you because you're strong, Elise. But we didn't see how it weighed on you. But we didn't see how it weighed you." Robert nodded. "I've carried your expectations my whole life," I said, my voice steady. "Always fixing Clara's storms, but I'm not her keeper." The words were a bridge, fragile but real, connecting us in a new understanding, not of blame, but of growth. "Like my mother did for me," he said. His confession was a stone dropped in still water, ripples of truth spreading. "I learned responsibility late because no one held me to it," he said. We did the same with Clara. Diane's hand found his. The breakdown of the van exposed the flaws in Clara and Daniel's marriage, a relationship that was constantly evolving. They began counseling, establishing a weekly routine to heal the wounds caused by their journey. Daniel's resolve grew, his voice firm in texts. "I'm prioritizing the kids, Elise, no more chasing her whims." Clara's adjustment was slower, her cafe job a grounding force, though her eyes still wandered to distant horizons. One evening, she texted me a photo of Lila with a Student of the Month certificate, which read, "She's thriving," with no mention of freedom or the road, just a mother's pride. I responded, "You're building something real." My words, a gentle nudge, not a lecture. During my visit, we sat on their patio, the Nevada dusk, providing a quiet backdrop. "I'm trying, Elise," she said softly. "Stability sometimes feels like a cage, but I see happiness in their eyes." Her admission was like a tiny seed planted in fertile soil. The deepest current was my own transformation, which Dr. Ellis mentioned in our sessions. "You're not just surviving, Elise, you're claiming your space." I smiled. "I'm learning to love without losing myself." The boundaries I had set, which had once been jagged and foreign, became roots, anchoring me in self-respect. I flew to Nevada for Thanksgiving, where the apartment smelled of roasted vegetables, had a folding table covered with a thrifted cloth, and Lila and Ethan's paper turkeys lined the walls. Our parents arrived with their suitcases full of Diane's cooking, which was a gesture of reconciliation. The meal was a tapestry of old and new, with Diane serving Clara a smaller portion and Robert sharing a story about his own youthful mistakes rather than Clara's victories. When Clara thought about hitting the road again, Daniel's voice was a quiet thunder. "We're staying for them." His eyes were on the kids, and Clara nodded, her gaze flickering with acceptance. When we made a paper star after supper, Lila asked insightful questions such as, "Aunt Elise, was the vehicle bad?" She asked, her hands occupied with glitter. "Not bad," I replied, "but it wasn't home. You need roots to grow." She nodded, her wisdom a child's clarity. Later, Clara joined me outside, the night air cool, and she said, "I used to think freedom was running, but it trapped us. This school job's walls, it's a different kind of free." Her words were a dawn breaking over her heart's horizon. "Thank you," she added, "for not giving in, for giving us what we needed." I looked into her eyes and we stood in silence, the stars above a map of new paths. Not just one road, but many, each valid and vital. Back in Chicago, my condo felt lighter. Its order reflected my own clarity, and I looked out at Lake Michigan, its waves a song of endurance, and saw not a cage, but a canvas. My family was healing not through sacrifice, but through truth. And Clara and Daniel rebuilt their home, laying the groundwork for Lila and Ethan's dreams. Our parents gradually came to understand that my strength was love rather than judgment. I carried a new wisdom, not a burden, but a flame. Love is not a self-loss, but a fire that burns steadily, lighting the way for others without consuming the one holding it. As spring blossomed, I knew that this journey, mine, theirs, ours, was not an end, but a beginning. A constellation of roots and stars guiding us toward a future we could all claim. Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be the encouragement someone else needs while they're standing at a crossroads, facing difficult decisions life has thrown their way. If this video has touched you in any way, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue this journey together, seeking courage and rediscovering the true worth within each of us. And remember, sometimes the most meaningful thing we can do for others isn't giving them exactly what they asked for, but helping them discover a path they can truly stand on for themselves. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I truly look forward to hearing yours.